Imagine a door in the middle of nowhere. A magic door, to be precise. I think we all know we'd walk through it. But the real question is, would some of us pause if we knew the date on the other side? Behind that door, the date is March 11th, 2011. Would you open it? Would you leave behind or remember what's on the other side? The day of the Great East Japan earthquake. At 2:45 in the afternoon, a magnitude 9 quake went on for 6 minutes in the Pacific Ocean. It triggered a tsunami. The people living in Sendai had just 8 minutes to evacuate. 8 minutes to leave everything behind and run. Early warnings promised waves of maybe 2 to 3 meters tall. The waves that eventually did come could well have been over 40. Shelter was sought at sea evacuation sites, but these were built for flooding, not what was actually coming. Billions in damage was done. Ensuing snowfall and aftershocks made rescue in an impossible situation just all the worse. 450,000 were left homeless, and 19,000 died. They were burned, they were crushed, they drowned. Japan is a country that has known disaster, and even just the beginning of 2024 alone has proven it will likely know it again. I admit that I'm no authority to speak on any of this. I'm not even comfortable showing the footage of the event itself. But yeah, I don't get to have it my way. This is context that must be addressed. Namely the devastation that something beautiful today couldn't exist without. Suzume, the latest work of writer and director MakotoShinkai, may mean as much as it does by commemorating that immeasurable loss. I really hate that it's a sorrowful place that we have to return to. I admit that this is something that I connected to that on the surface was not meant for me, but I wouldn't feel the way that I do today if Shinkai hadn't gone back there. A schoolgirl, living chair, and a talking cat god opening a door for me, asking me if I could find it in me to live for tomorrow. Well, it has taken us both a while, but it feels nice to be saying it. Hello again, old friend. I'm certain that talking about you is probably always going to be a running thing on this channel. Am I talking about Shinkai again just for the sake of it? I did think that for a while, but eventually I couldn't ignore that the lasting feeling that his new film left me with was really what I made this channel to talk about. 2023 saw some of the industry's heaviest hitters come to play and come to play hard, so I understand why Suzume wasn't necessarily the most important name in the conversation. But at the same time, I truly hate how quickly for the larger community this film just seems to have come and gone. I really wasn't asking for your name levels of conversation, but I do think this one deserves some more time in the sun. As I said the last time I discussed this guy's work, Shinkai plays the hits that some of us will love and some of us will hate. Attachment and comparative analysis is difficult to avoid with the guy, but I truly believe that it does not benefit the conversation. He's quite literally not come from the same beginnings as the other masters of the medium, but he still deserves the same freedom to, just as they have done for years, continue to sit with the ideas, the toys, and the images that mean something to him, to leave the personal signatures that he wants to. After all, possessing that freedom means he delivers worthy contenders. Suzume was just an ordinary girl on her commute to school, but a chance meeting with nothing less than a wizard leaves her with, let's see, preventing devastating earthquakes, catching a talking cat, not letting slip that her chair can talk, and oh yeah, making it home before her aunt gets really mad. Invited back into that world of magic that doesn't quite behave how we expect, Suzume inherits the job of a closer, a guardian of the supernatural. She has to close doors popping up across Japan, sealing away an entity known as the Worm from causing earthquakes with its release. It's a job that shouldn't be on her shoulders, but it's one that she won't walk away from when a cat she stumbled upon turned that wizard into a talking chair for kicks. What follows is nothing less than Shinkai's love letter to the country that he calls home, as well as the character of the people of it. Suzume's departure from her found home, unlocking a spirit that's been touched by both. The truth is, the key got thrown in that lock, the vocals hit me, and damn it, I was in another world until Shinkai was done with me. I really do come to fantasy anime for the hits of high and low and the occasional slice of isekai, and it's rare that I'll call any one piece of those subgenres the definitive take. but Suzume is the most spirited away that I've been since, well, you know, Spirited Away. As much as my heart will be forever attached to the tradition and the sheer size of high fantasy, my attention has been thoroughly drawn to Shinkai's slow encroaching of magic onto the everyday. This breed of contemporary urban fantasy that directors like Hosoda and Shinkai have truly defined the feel of in recent years really has become my drink of choice, simply because to Shinkai, the escapism cannot live without consequence. Where it can always be relegated to a spiritual or even digital world, I truly love when the scourge of the beast or the weight of a destiny follows you home in the morning, or even to school the next day. Magic is here, that's the only information that he really wants us to care about. I do not have the rules on how any of this works from here on out, and that's a gloriously inviting perspective to attack this kind of story from. A wizard just shows up at your door and you just don't have to know every detail right now. The only thought that has to matter is, maybe I can do some good here. The potential, or even the stress of that, making you put one foot in front of the other quicker than any prophecy feels like it could. Of course, letting those spirits run loose in our world means not letting the norms of the genre be the guiding hand on how they move and breathe. Mystical forces have made their presence known in Shinkai's worlds before, but it feels like they've rarely ever deviated from the traditions or the intellect of the separate realms that they've been confined to. In Suzume though, Shinkai cuts loose, and he just lets them run with whatever vibe could be interesting. To make our spirits extraordinary, the real world is forcibly portrayed as ordinary, but on this outing, Shinkai flips the script. He recognizes the real fun in throwing folklore into a world that's moved on without it, and that doesn't have as much of a place for it anymore. The avatars that these beings exist in, the shapes that they mostly take, are totems and relics of a world that they no longer know. They're not these grand creatures that you try and capture in a mural, or these ancient pieces of an old world. They're something different. They're something new. They have invaded Suzume's world, but emphasis never deviates from it being her world. The fantasy simply never swallows the stage, just adapts to the knowledge that it can complement the life and light that is already here. The shapes aren't typical, but they truly do thrive in this uncrowded space. I mean, not long into the stretch of this movie, we're watching a living chair who's a guy, chasing a cat who's a demigod, and then there's our hero barely keeping up with this big evil smoke worm ready to peek over the hill that's just over their heads. It's more than a little bit crazy, but it works. Shinkai limits the number of big swings that he plays with in this world so that he doesn't revert to total high fantasy, and the singular pieces that he plays with shine all the brighter for it. This exact chase has been done, it will be done again, but I do think we'll wait a while until anyone sets the board with as interesting pieces as Shinkai does. Some may not agree, but something unique as a schoolgirl, a talking chair, and cat is to me nothing short of a Ghibli party. I mean, they create a social media phenomena in the world of this film for a reason.
Not good.
Sota, the wizard, the closer, taking on the form of a broken child's chair in the blink of an eye. It's not exactly a beat that's out of the ordinary for this genre, but Shinkai really plays on the comedy of the situation. This little chair really could just hop about, but the physicality of its animation just never gets old. He legitimately enters the same territory of the likable uncanny that you get with things like puppets. At the end of the day, his ability to emote is quite limited, but damn it, whether it's him not quite knowing how to respond to some of Suzume's hijinks, or just the desperate panic from him, I feel damn well all of it. I can't tell which it is. I don't know if it's the voice performance or the details of the micro expressions. I don't understand the sorcery, but I won't deny that it works. I never look at Sota and think, that's just 7 little slabs of wood. I never forget that this is still him, that he's still in there. That's an accomplishment in my book, second maybe only to the quality of his implementation. Making Sota work as a 3D character within multiple 2D sequences is done to a near flawless degree. Seriously, the chair sprinting and doing parkour in multiple sequences like it does never lost its effect on me. I never wasn't impressed by Shinkai leaning into the pure comedy of just the visual information that you're seeing itself being the gag. This chair is doing a Tom Cruise and I love it. Sign me up for another 12 movies of specifically this.
Daijin.
Speaking of leaning as well, I really like to imagine the writing process of this film, involving Shinkai pining over what shape Daijin should take, and then completely losing his mind when he connected the dots and realized there was no better choice than his favorite animal, the one constant of all his films. Yes, cats! If you have to have something represent a guardian of nature, be the literal stand-in for Mother Earth itself, then you will definitely not find a better choice than these little nuisance hell beasts.
Lots of people are gonna die soon.
His exaggerated voice and design is at its best when he's being nothing short of a little gremlin, and Shinkai doesn't shy away from that. He lets this little demon embrace his tendency for chaos. I think he's the source of a lot of the problems that people have with the narrative. His choices pushing the characters closer to oblivion than they ever needed to go, but honestly, I will allow him the selfishness. It's likely that you've had one or two kinds of interactions with cats, ranging from peaceful to unpredictable, and as uneasy as they can still make me, I don't deny them their nature. It's why I get what Daijin does. Sadaijin too. Their behavior leads to the film's darkest moments, but I get it. If you were only ever destined to be good, to be the literal yin and yang holding reality together, would you not feel that you were owed just one shot at being bad? How can you ever expect someone to do what is expected of them, to stand beside you, if you've not first given them a chance at the alternative? Why the hell should destiny matter to them if you've determined it for them? It's a question that Suzume eventually comes to respect. Despite what these cats have done to her friends, to her family even, she gets that it shouldn't have to be destiny for them. Just a piece of their nature that they have the right to keep unpredictable, right even up to the moment that they're all about to die. And here enters the worm, the seething mass that in my experience, nobody could seem to see beyond. Shinkai's recent films haven't really had a definitive antagonist, and in my opinion they're better for it. So it's a shame that when Shinkai did his best version of this, that the conversation sort of started and stopped at its design. I get it that it's an easy parallel to draw. The imagery is undeniably obvious, but to write this thing off as just an enormous phallus is to focus on just that obviousness. I look at this thing and I see nothing short of the next volcano, a beautifully alluring slice of destruction that thoroughly fascinates me. We will never know the true extent of it, and I adore that lack of specificity. This smoke worm is just a marvel to look at, that just like the real thing is not inherently evil, just birthed to wait until it does what it does. I mean, does it even know? Is this worm, the only name that we actually even have for it, even aware? It's a portrait of calamity that my own imagination just runs away with, that I feel I can barely scratch the surface of, that makes me forget that it's not a genuine natural disaster, that this thing couldn't materialize from a door in my own world. A piece of pure annihilation that, at its near most devastating nameless peak, left me certain, confident that if I am to know the end, or feel the rage of its wake just as it's too late, then I truly cannot deny the view. Be it the infinite miasma of glorious impending death, or a burst of rain upon its destruction, that I might pay mind to, for only just a moment. I think that it takes a truly special hand indeed to bring all of that to our world and make it feel even only as beautiful as it does because it is in our world. Whether it's through a curse made for a random piece of her bedroom or through a glorious kaiju battle, to state as wholeheartedly as those who came before and those who will come after, that even without the presence of the obviously fantastical, even with its untraditional makeup, our world possesses magic. It's just a magic that we might not have all found yet. Even if all it ends up being is a realization, a moment where you think that you want to be here, where you feel as at home in your own life as the likes of the Land of Oz or Wonderland may have ever convinced you that you were. That's a feeling that Shinkai has made me feel with most of his films, but none more so than this one. He realized that that feeling isn't exclusive to one defined world, and the space between them is where I hope he chooses to remain. Of course, these are the loud ways that Shinkai tries to communicate all this. Or perhaps maybe they're the more positive attempts. The more quiet, and I guess depending on how you look at it, sad method, being how Shinkai and his collaborators look at the world. Or namely, how they choose to draw it. If your social media, particularly your TikTok, has ever looked like mine once upon a time did, then you've no doubt knowingly or not, gazed at, for lack of a better term, the majesty of the art of Shinkai. It is, after all, the one constantly agreeable tenet of his films. If Studio Ghibli is the kingdom of dreams and madness, then Shinkai has made comics wave films into nothing short of the house of the real. A realness that's expressed for a sellable detail that you feel you can touch. The world of animation in the East has never really quite needed a Spider-Verse level shakeup like the West did. We weren't exactly craving a moment that reset the benchmark for talent and vision. Shinkai wasn't working in this period of stagnation when he released Your Name, but I think he did something potentially as important. I truly admire that he's continued to ride the blank check that film gave him to perfect his hyper-realistic style. He hasn't since compromised on reaching a standard that can convince generations to come of what can be done with this medium, to entice them with how close to real this somehow manages to be. But then again, on the other hand, it does remain the only major criticism of his work that I have sort of let in. This is a dreamlike level of quality, but there's a reason that it's the sort of thing that you scroll past on your phone and just think, yeah, it's pretty good, but not much more. I can't do that myself. I can't breathe this in and not smell the roses for as long as I can, but I just really cannot deny what a great number of people have managed to reduce it to. I can't forget the residual sense I feel that this could just be punctuation that other creatives could feasibly remove from the work and still deliver, albeit to a lesser extent, the same cultural and narrative effect. Suzume, though, thankfully felt like a genuine step towards Shinkai reclaiming the meaning behind that style. It's not some bold moment where he gives the scenery a specific voice. It's always had one, but for the first time he makes it the least disposable part of the picture. Shinkai in general has many known and noted favourites, and just like with any known filmmaker, you can kind of approach his work with a bingo card of sorts. One of those recurring elements being that he's frequently touched multiple times on the political response and the societal impact of natural disaster. But with Suzume, he fully places his focus this time on the human cost. To put it in very specific terms, in the absence of a certain Mr. Fumito Ueda, off working on something new and grand of his own, Shinkai has become, in his absence, sort of a new master of scratching a particular itch that some of us have. Shinkai and his team delivering portraits of ruins and abandoned places that, believe me, I could get infinitely lost in.
A door.
The sights of the doors and the ever after are unmatched depictions of pure decay, where the instinct might have been to paint these spaces as cruel, to leave these remnants of homes and spaces angry for their abandonment. Shinkai instead lets them only communicate one thing that they might be capable of at the end: regret. What these characters briefly step over or pay respect to, regardless of how far they journey across Japan, has all rotted away in the time that we've not paid it any thought, only even slightly being given life by the briefest of recollection. In my mind, I can look at something like a fairground ruins or an old home, and I can still label the pieces that might make it mean something to me, but in the end, that idea, that recollection, is of a ghost. What I stand amongst or before now is a new space, a new being if you can grant it that essence, only meaning something to people who have long since gone, now never free of the former. The detailing of the scenery and dressing communicates the true loneliness of abandonment. The film takes us through these progressively larger monuments to hosts that have moved on. All of these spaces bearing marks of what we've attached to the inanimate that can't control the final form in which they're now slowly falling apart. These ruins then being further weaponized in the story's favor when they're paired with Shinkai's signature vistas and backdrops. Each of those wallpaper-worthy landscapes, they almost become tainted with the new knowledge of their undeniable transience. You can't now look at any of it without being fiercely aware of how quickly all of this can just go away. It's a difficult, in fact near impossible prospect to truly capture stillness, emptiness, especially within a medium as alive as animation. And Shinkai gets that. He gets that that can't be the whole picture, so he instead focuses on the brief interim between it. The moments of quiet aren't ever going to quite feel intertwined with everything else that's going on in the picture, so he doubles down on them only getting to feel like a precursor or a conclusion. Suzume locking the door and sealing away the worm, getting glimpses of what these places were, it feels like a near terminal echo, the kind of exhale that comes right before death. These blocks of cinder and these slabs of wood can't actually speak, but damn it, tell me that you can't still hear the inanimate saying, contently, "This is what I was." It's the sort of thinking that can easily throw you into the pits of existentialism, but that's not what it's been engineered to achieve. The new literal thematic richness that these backgrounds may have always unknowingly craved, now allowing for moments that offer perspective, I guess. The kind of peek at a stream of pure consciousness, coming from something that you never cared enough to think it capable of, like a child's broken chair. A piece of ruin truly coming to life beyond what the scenery is trying to scream. In turning Sota into a chair, Shinkai returns to his signature stopgap that he has always tried to force between his leading relationships. It's of course got this nice energy to it all. You can't really watch these two traditionally develop as friends. Shinkai not actually physically separating them, but forcing them into this situation where they're just constantly on a learning curve, right up until Sota's sacrifice. The idea really working for me because this unorthodox setup just shows that they can't bring themselves to abandon one another. Not when their chance encounter has unlocked a feeling that life won't be the same again as long as I know them. You know that you can't let them wander deeper into danger or ruin, slowly lose themselves to its finality, when it should be you there yourself. They become nothing short of kindred spirits. This film is less so of a love story, and more of a look at a connection that's been deeply affected by this destruction. What Sota's been no doubt raised to connect his duty to his whole life, and what Suzume has spent most of her life trying to forget her connection to. The pure oblivion that neither of them, but Suzume in particular, cannot lose another person to. Sota gets transformed into a chair, and for the whole film he unknowingly inhabits a walking, talking symbol of that. A glorious touch when it comes to this once-in-a-lifetime pairing, that he would take the form of something ultimately broken, a piece of ruin being an essential piece of who she is, and what happened to her. This is the heart of it for me, the literal key in the lock if you will, because I've never really known a disaster like any of this. I'm really fortunate enough to exist in a state where its grip is unknowable to me. The closest I've come was just an event that saw me stuck indoors. I lost time, I certainly lost money, but I can't comfortably say I suffered when I look at this imagery. When I consider Suzume, when I consider March 11th, when I remember what they and so many others have to carry. Much of Japanese cinema is only naturally focused on these events. I mean, Shinkai himself hasn't even made a film since 2016 that doesn't touch on this incident in some kind of way. Suzume is ultimately just another piece in that growing lineage of works, but it's the one where Shinkai finally no longer just evoked the imagery of March 11th, but now fully confronts it. Shinkai finally arriving at a place that, it feels like across his career, he was always making his way to. Across the writing of the film, Shinkai has neglected no aspect of events when it comes to portraying how Japan is constantly on the precipice of calamity. I remember the first time I saw the film, I remember the sheer panic that I felt at the chorus of those phone alerts when the earthquake appears. Seeing that systematic, collective awareness of the immediately familiar but still unknown danger. I recognise quickly that I don't get the right to be shocked by that. But then when she sees that worm, when Suzume is the only one who can see it, when I step into that slice of hell with her, when she journeys to the ever after, I can't hold it back. How do you not sit transfixed, deeply afraid of this glorious metaphor for a disaster that a certain generation cannot pay their mind to? By the burning ever after making the realization of her grief undeniable. In just one day, Suzume lost her whole world. In that fateful event, she lost her mother. Unreachable and without a doubt lost, Suzume still marched into the snow, being left with a particular memento, something that will always tell her how she's no longer whole. And then years later, in the wake of a battle in the land of the dead, Suzume accepts the strange thing that grief and trauma ultimately are. She thinks that she's put this behind her, that she's closed every door as time has passed, but all it's taken is the moving of a stone, little more than a breeze to gently let it creep back in, to find that what you thought you found a chance to move on from is back, constantly whispering in your ear, and it feels like it's going nowhere. Nature will do what it always does, even if we can't make sense of it at the time. And to express an idea like that, to express the extent of the senseless loss for a country, let alone just one person, should really be impossible. But through just some pages on a diary, Shinkai did it. Through the goodbyes, he set the cost in stone.
Have a good day.
See you later.
See you tonight. See you tonight.
See you soon. See you soon. See you around.
See you later.
See ya.
Come home
I
soon.
won't be long.
Later.
Take care.
Take care.
I'll see you.
I'll see you.
letting that pain sting, burn, and scream to spell out what our reality actually depends on. And it's simple. If we don't work with nature, if we don't respect our place in this relationship, then it is going to respond with chaos. This world doesn't see us as people. Why would it? When not enough of us treat it any better. Shinkai may make it hurt when he spells it out to us, but he wants to make it clear that you can never really close the door on what's happened. You can skirt the line of closing away what's hurt you, but you'll never really shut it. Someday you're going to come to that devastating understanding. But if you're lucky, you'll retain that truth. You'll let it transform you. Let it become a foundational part of yourself that shapes and informs who you are now. When Suzume accepted that, when I accepted that, the film became, in the dark light of chaos, nothing short of a beacon of hope. A clear message for anyone who might need to hear it, that against that seemingly impossible prospect, against all information pointing otherwise, we and life can go on. The film is a tome that, in its final moments, tries not just to speak to the audience who lived through or with the tragedy, but a true attempt at crafting an enduring tale for future generations, who might just experience something similar, and if they're lucky enough not to, will at the very least never forget those who are lost.
I'll come back for you, I promise.
Those who do not get to hear that message.
I return them to you.
Now, I'm aware that I may potentially paint this all as some cut and dry, not very well thought out attempt at a eulogy, but I think it's a true credit to Shinkai that he won't let that message just be some superfluous high note, like I'm sure a lot of people think it would be. He doesn't neglect to acknowledge in this film the still very long process of recovery that takes place even today, that knowledge being embodied in every person that Suzume meets in the film. Every person that Suzume comes across really does just kind of happen upon her. There's very few somewhat immediately predestined meetings, just unprepared connections that only really feel predestined in retrospect, that in the grand scheme of her life she would be lacking if she hadn't found. The generation that I am a part of, and the next generations that follow, will be the ones who watch the world die quicker than any who have preceded us, but that conclusion cannot detract from an awareness of what we can still do now. Each character goes the distance for someone that ultimately they don't have to help. A beautiful testament to what decency events like this will continue to inspire today. To the genuine character that it has to take to carry that generational strength. That the one way that we can all show respect to those who are no longer with us is to pass that on ourselves. I'm sorry, but we're still going to be the Red Sky generation. The sad fact of the matter is that this is only going to get worse. Where there's no known individual to point a finger at when it comes to this disaster, no such luxury will follow us from now on. Systems and representatives will make the choices that doom us. It's inevitable that we're going to feel that hurt again. But in amongst the sorrow or even the hope, I feel acceptance above all. A new understanding that this is just the way that the world works. It's going to happen again, but don't ever think that that means you're denied a future. The hope that I've taken away from this experience is that I genuinely believe that we can and will find a way through it. How we do that is going to be up to us. It might not even work for that long, but I believe if we try even for just a moment, then we'll see that tomorrow is worth living for.
Your mountains and rivers that we have long called our own, we claim them no longer, and respectfully return them to you!
Suzume ended, and I left the theatre with a spark that, for the first time in years, didn't fade on the journey home. That I held close throughout a truly terrible year. I felt really happy for Shinkai. This was honestly the one where I never felt the story was somehow slipping away from him. Any residual feeling of incompleteness felt invisible to me in this picture. I really think that he successfully sold the grand premise that he set out to tell. If nothing else, this was just the one that he deserved to bask in the success of. Yeah, the guy did a damn good job. I would almost be on board if he came out and said, that's it after this. Next time, a new beginning. Enough with the magical realism, with having imagery tap into the theme, enough with confronting the same pieces of history. Not because he's necessarily said all he wants to say, but because damn, how do you say anything better? I know at the very least though that I'm still rooting for the guy. I think I always will be. How could I not have faith in the guy after he achieved all this? Suzume did nothing short of convince me to positively change my outlook in life, in a way that only one person ever has done before. Suzume starts the film cold, crying, alone, and she ends her story with the opposite, with that support group, with people and experiences that will her to move forward, but that without she could still do so alone. The same nature that tore her life apart, that has destroyed so much, is bringing us together now, connecting us now. I think now that I've maybe got it in me to someday reach a similar coalescence, transform just like Suzume, to take who she is, who she has been, and become who they've all seen she can be, who she was meant to be. Someone who's processed what they've suffered, and now has it in them to give comfort to themselves, for which everything is now still so fresh, to let them know that it'll be okay. It'll be okay. I return them to you.